Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
Hi, I'm here today with Eddie Downey of Downey Family Farm, and your farm is located in Boring, Maryland. Is that right?
That's right. It's a small community. People ask us all the time, is that really a real place? It is a real place. Way back in the day, it was called Fairview, Maryland, but it's on a rail line that also goes through Fairview, Pennsylvania. So being a smaller town, they had to change their name, and the Postmaster General at the time's last name was Boring. So it became Boring, Maryland.
I feel like what we were talking about before the podcast started today, though, your day has been anything but boring, it sounds like.
Yeah, so we had a calf born last night, and we're in the middle of getting about 4 inches of snow right now, and we already had about 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground. So we are partners on Hubbell's Jeremiah 2911. We were the last partners to join him, so we got the off-season months when most people aren't breeding bulls. But we didn't want to miss out on our chance to partner on him, so we went ahead and did it, and this is going to be our first winter season having calves by him, and this is his first winter calf, and of course it comes on the snowiest day of the year. But the calf is doing fine. Pretty little bull calf. We got her up under a heat lamp with some straw, and it looks like he's going to do just fine.
So how many head did you breed to Jeremiah then, with this being the first breeding season?
I believe we have, I would have to check my notes exactly. It's somewhere between 8 and 10 females bred to him. Okay. And so we think we have a pretty good count on the due dates, and this is the first, and all 10 of those should be calving over the next month. So that may not be, for us, that's a lot. We only have about 20 brood cows, so that's about half the herd. So we're going to be busy, especially with the weather. We got to make sure we keep a close eye on them.
Well, here's hoping that there's no more snowstorms or frigid temperatures headed your way, at least not when you're calving.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep us dry, please.
Well, aside from your location, tell me a little bit about yourselves and how you got into Longhorns.
Yeah, it's kind of a interesting story. I actually grew up, born and raised in East Texas, and everyone everywhere had cattle. We did not. I did raise a few animals for like 4-H and FFA, but never cattle. Joined the military, married a woman from Maryland, came to Maryland. Lucky enough, we ended up with a farm with 30 acres, and I still never thought really we'd get into cattle. But we bought a couple of Highland cows at first, and I was surprised that the cows were actually easier keepers than goats, pigs, chickens. Like, it's kind of funny. I tell everybody the bigger the animal, it's actually the less the upkeep. So I always kind of was interested in Longhorns. I saw a few steers advertised as beef animals on Facebook Marketplace, and we ended up meeting Dan and Stacy Workman from Littlestown, Pennsylvania, which is only about 45 minutes to an hour from us. And we went there, and they showed us the steers first. They were in a separate pen. They were like 2-year-old steers, and I thought they were beautiful. I thought those were the biggest horns I'd ever seen. And of course, looking back at a 2-year-old steer, it was like maybe 40 inches of horn. And we ended up buying more steers than we went to get. And then she showed us 2 mature cows. And then it was like seeing a blue whale for the first time. Like, I was completely blown away. I thought they were the most beautiful animals. Again, I thought the horns were unbelievably big. And it just so happens that Dan and Stacy were actually in the process of getting out of Longhorns. So we bought the steers, came home, kept in contact with Dan and Stacy. I had 1,000 questions for them, and they ended up selling us one of those 2 cows. And I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. It was our first registered cow. Again, I thought she had the biggest horns I'd ever seen, and she's 57 inches tip to tip. So and that was 2019. And then in 2020, the world shut down for COVID, and we were just looking for something to do. And I happened to see that there was this thing called the Cherry Blossom Sale on Facebook. So we went down there, and after that, we were just hooked. Like, the people really, I mean, everybody says it, but it's true. The people were so, so fantastic. We didn't know anything about Longhorns. We didn't know anything about cattle hardly. We didn't know a single person in that barn. And, you know, we went out to Ann's for the party after the show, or after the futurity. And it was really, really fun. Came home with two heifers. One of them was a 50-50 daughter. We had no idea who 50-50 BCB was at the time. We just got blindly lucky and ended up with her. But yeah, after that, Dan and Stacy sold us their last cow. And so they've gotten completely out of Longhorns. We've got their last couple of cows, but it's been really cool because does our AIing for us too. So it's been awesome having her. She's a seasoned breeder. She judged Longhorns for a long time. So they've kind of helped foster us in, and now we've made a bunch of relationships, and it's been great.
So do you still have those first few that you purchased from her?
We do. The first one she sold us, I'll never sell her. She's my favorite cow, even though she's only 57 inches. She's an all black cow. But we love her. She's our herd boss. She does what I hear a lot of people say their bulls do. She keeps everybody from fussing at each other. Anytime we get a new cow that's a little spun up, she makes sure she calms them down. There's never any, no horseplay or anything. And the other one is actually that cow's mother. And that cow's mother, Stacy, said she would never ever sell her in her life. But Stacy saw how much we loved the Longhorns and that we stayed good friends. So she's like, okay, we'll sell her to you, but it's not easy. And so I kind of promised Stacy and Dan we'll never sell Iris. Iris is the cow's name. Iris will live out her days here. She's an older cow. She's going on 12, 13 years old now. So Iris and Nyquist is the daughter. They're still here, and as long as I'm alive, they'll still be here.
Nice. So I'm going to backtrack, and I picked up on something you mentioned when you were kind of at the beginning of your story. You said that you were lucky enough to get a farm and you have 30 acres. I feel like you have to tell us now, because I know, but our listeners don't know, about what the farm actually contains and kind of the history behind it, because it's pretty amazing. Yeah,
it's a pretty cool deal. I mean, we got really lucky that the listing agent messed some things up when listing the house, but the farmhouse was built in 1891, and it was one of the, in 1891, it was this big, big, beautiful farmhouse. And the previous owners took great care of it, but they never updated it. They added a tiny kitchen onto the back in the 1950s, and that was it. So we've done a whole lot of work to it. One of the really cool things was, if you imagine our farm plat as a perfect square, there was one little chunk taken out of the middle of one of the sides, a 1 acre chunk, and that was an old log cabin. Now, it doesn't look like a log cabin from the outside. It looks like just a normal old small house, country home. There was an old lady that lived there when we first moved in, and unfortunately she passed away. We were able to get the house, and we had no idea that it needed a bunch of work when we started working on it, that the original structure was this old log cabin from like the 1830s. So what was supposed to be like a 3-month renovation project took 2 years. But like from that, we have we have a really, really neat we call it the guest house, that we put on Airbnb. And again, that went on Airbnb. We put it live. We didn't know a thing in the world about what Airbnb was, except that people rented houses. So right, again, in the middle of COVID, we finally put it on in May of 2020. And about 2 days after we put it on, we got our first booking. And again, we're in a town called Bourne, Maryland. Everybody in this part of the country thinks we're in the middle of nowhere. I know most of the Longhorn people are in the Midwest, so middle of nowhere out there, it means something totally different. But we're 30 minutes from Baltimore, kind of in the country. There's really no tourist attractions or anything around here. So we put it on Airbnb. We'll see what it does. We got that first booking in 2 days. People showed up, and for 2 years, it was almost at 100% occupancy. Like, it was just crazy, crazy, crazy. Every weekend was booked. About 80% of the weekdays were booked. It finally started to slow down a little bit in 2023, but that's been a really cool thing. We've gotten to meet a whole bunch of people, and Longhorn people love nothing more than to show off their cattle. So with the Airbnb, we get to show off our cattle to new people all the time. It's been really fun.
Yeah, I feel you said there's no tourist attractions, but I feel like your ranch itself is probably a tourist attraction for folks who maybe, don't get outside of the city that much and can look out their window and see your longhorns.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in Maryland, right? Like people don't see cows, much less longhorns. Like they kind of, it's fun seeing their reaction the first time, especially when you tell them, yeah, you can pet that cow. Yeah, you can pet that cow. Like that's, they're kind of blown away. But yeah, I would say probably 50% of our guests are visiting family in the area. And then it's probably, 25% are in the area on business and don't want to be in Baltimore. And then another 25% is people just from all over that were just looking for a cool place to stay. And they saw the web page, they saw that it was a Longhorn ranch and so and a log cabin. So they booked it just for that sake. So yeah, I mean the ranch part, the same Airbnb, not on a farm, probably wouldn't do what ours has done with the farm here.
Have you ever made anyone a new Longhorn breeder? Have you ever made any sales through the guests?
I've made some beef sales from it. And I've certainly made a lot of friends that we have a very high rate of return guests, that people that, and some of them, they're like, well, we didn't want to stay at your Airbnb because it's a little far away. And then by the end of their stay, they're like, oh, we're coming here every year. This has been the best. I mean, if we have someone here when a cow calves, forget it. They're coming back. Like they're not, no question about it. 5-star review, they're coming back. And we've had that a handful of times because we pretty much are having at least 1 or 2 calves year round. So I don't think I've made any new breeders, but I've made some beef customers, and I've made some fans for sure.
So you mentioned your beef, and for folks that don't know, you also, in addition to the beef, you also sell pork and poultry, right?
So the pork and poultry has slowed down significantly over the last year or so, as our herd has grown and our family has grown up. Time is getting less and less and less. So yeah, when we first started the farm, we did everything. And we shrank down. We got rid of all the goats. We don't have as many chickens now. And we're probably going to get rid of our last few pigs in the coming year, just because we're really trying to focus on the Longhorn program. But yeah, for a while we sold poultry and pork as well. It's been a little more difficult. Sales have kind of never really taken off on that end. A lot of people see that we're focused, that, we advertise ourselves as Longhorn breeders, as beef breeders. So moving pork and poultry has been a little more difficult. So we've kind of made the decision that we're going to get away from that and just focus on the Longhorns.
So what lessons have you learned in kind of getting your Longhorn beef business going, and what role do you see it playing in the future of your operations?
It's interesting because me and the guys at RTG up in New York and Mike Albanese just had a really long conversation about this. Mike has a fantastic beef program. And I kind of think that to be soluble as a Longhorn breeder, you need to have beef as I don't know if backbone is the right word, but it's got to be an integral part of your program. So we're trying to ramp up our beef stuff now. We've got a few leads on some commercial operations. Our biggest hurdle is, I think the same as everyone's, is getting a USDA processor that'll take Longhorns. A big part of our farm is we get brewers grains twice a week from 2 breweries in Baltimore. So I've got good leads on commercial connections for selling the beef to those guys. I mean, they've been very, very interested. My biggest problem is the USDA certification. So right now our beef is only sold by the whole and half side, where the customer picks it up directly from the processor, because we have a lot of state approved facilities that can do that, but USDA has been tougher to come by. So that's kind of where we're trying to go now, is make connections with the USDA certification processors, and so that we can get that commercial stuff rolling.
Do you feel like that's harder for someone in your part of the country than it is for, say, example, someone breeding in Texas?
Yeah, just because I have very, very few other breeders that I can connect with locally to say, hey, who are you using? What's the experience been like? The other tough part is that I have an office job, like so many of us do. I have a 9-to-5 that takes a ton of time. The other difficult part is I work in a secure government facility, so I'm completely unreachable for about 45 hours a week during prime business hours. But yeah, I mean, oddly enough, there's a good amount of USDA processing facilities near me. It's just finding ones, A, that have openings. We're all fighting that fight. And B, that are willing to take horned cattle. Like, some of them won't take horned cattle. Some of them want quotas of, 30, 40 at a time, or 30 to 40 a year. And I mean, I obviously can't match that quota. So that's kind of been the tough part.
Makes sense. So now let's change subjects for a little bit. Now that you have Longhorns, what would you say is your favorite part?
I mean, I love the events. I love the people. We went to our first legacy sale last year. That was so much fun. Again, that was actually where we struck up a relationship with the Brightman brothers from Norwich, from RTG. I had a table. My whole family. I had a bunch of family who was supposed to be coming to Dallas because we're all from there. None of them could make it. RTG came with their whole crew, and they didn't have a table, so it worked out. And my goodness, what a time! That was a hoot, sitting at the table with them, worth the price of admission. But yeah, I mean, getting together, and not just those guys, but all the people that I've met. Like, the East Coast has a lot of really, really fun, good breeders. I mean, great people, and it's been good getting to know them. Ann Gravitt and G&G Longhorns is on the East Coast, and her and Sean do such a good job with their events and kind of helping keep people connected through that. But yeah, I think the events and the people and then calving season is a close. I don't know, those may be tied. Like, I mean, I can't imagine. Somebody once asked me, why Longhorns, and would you do another breed? And I don't think I would, because if you're raising Black Angus, there's nothing that exciting about calving. Calving is probably just means more work to do that day. You got to get a tag in them, and you got to get them shot and weighed and all that stuff. I mean, for a Longhorn breeder, it's opening a Christmas present every time. You just never ever. We think we know when we put a black cow with a brindle what we're going to get or something. You really never ever know what you're going to get. And so, yeah, that's really, really exciting and fun.
What's your ideal, what are you hoping for this year in terms of coloring on one of those baby calves? Like, what's your dream calf?
Well, we already got it, and we got it at a couple of days before Christmas. So that big black cow I was telling you guys about that we bought, the first registered cow we ever bought, it's a really funny story. Stacy bred cows for years and years and years, and she wanted nothing more than to have a black and white heifer. She wanted a black and white heifer so bad. So Iris, the mom, is a drag iron daughter, and she's what people call a blue roan, black and white with black spots. And she tried everything to get a black and white heifer out of this cow, and she never did it. She bred her to BL Night Checks, and that's where Night Quest came in. Well, Night Quest is all black, just like BL Night Checks. She's got like a little white spot on her udder, but she's all black. So the first year, I pretty much let Stacy pick all of our breeding because she was doing the AIing. She had the semen in her tank. And then finally, I bought some Patent HB straws. So he's a blue roan bull, and I put her with Night Quest. And so my very first breeding that I ever did on Stacy's cows, I got a black and white heifer. And I called her up, and I almost felt guilty. I said, Stacy, I hesitate to even tell you, but I got a black and white, just the most beautiful black and white heifer. So that's that heifer's name is Starry Night, and she's just a pure knockout. She's got horns just like her dad. She's going to be a 90-inch cow. We've actually got her consigned to the Hudson Valentine Bluegrass sale, so we're really excited about that. But I bred Mom back the same way. I said, if this is what Patent and Night Quest are going to do, she's getting a Patent straw every year. So she was due right around Christmas, and sure enough, she had another black and white, beautiful spotted heifer calf, and I was out there before Christmas doing my happy. I hope no neighbors were watching that happy dance. I feel a little ridiculous. But yeah, so we already got that one. And Jeremiah's got a few that I'm really, really excited about that are coming up that we'll keep everybody updated on in the next week or two.
Nice. Are you pretty quick about adding them to your website?
So I'm much better about adding them to Facebook and Instagram than I am to the website. Charlotte Cody she's one of our partners on Jeremiah, and they're another, they've just been absolutely fantastic, getting to know them and working with them. But I was talking to her the other day, and she's like, Eddie, I'm looking, and I don't see any of your Jeremiah stuff from last year on the. I was like, oh gosh, I got to update the website. So, yeah, I need to be better about that for sure. That's one of my resolutions in 2024 is
I like
being
it.
better about updating the website.
I like that one. So that was, like you mentioned, that was kind of a funny story. Do you have any other comical Longhorn stories?
I don't know if I have that many comical ones. I don't know. We had, I guess the next best thing is, or one that's kind of funny is we bought a heifer at the I think it was either the Cherry Blossom or the East Coast Classic. It was in Culpeper, one of Ann's sales, and we bought this heifer that Jay Wachter and Rob Finza had partnered on, and she comes out of a big time maternal line. I know Jay was super, super ticked because I got a fantastic deal on her, but she came into the sale ring just completely hot-headed, losing her mind. Like anybody that was at the sale that day remembers this animal. She had a bloody nose. She had already busted like a couple of boards in the back. I honestly don't know what I was thinking buying her, because as a new breeder, I probably shouldn't have been buying an animal that hot-headed, but she was a fantastic heifer. So we got her home. She was one of the first ones we bred to Jeremiah last year, and she had her calf on Valentine's Day in a creek bed that had about 2 inches of water in it. Now, we got super, super lucky that Valentine's Day was unusually warm. But I was at work, like I mentioned, completely unreachable. My wife, who over the last year, she's really gotten way more involved. But at that point, her involvement was a little tepid. So she's out there with the most hot-headed animal we have on our ranch, trying to get her and this baby out of a creek. Now, the creek is cut into a ravine about 6 foot on each side. Oh, so wow. The cow's sitting way down lower than my wife, but she's like trying to use logs to pry the cow out of there. The cow wouldn't, you know how they imprint on a spot. She would not move. The calf is just fit to be tied. He's fine. He's laying down in the bottom of this creek bed with water running under him. And Laura, my wife, was out there for hours trying to get her out. Rocks, sticks, everything. The cow wouldn't move. Well, to this day, my wife can come out the back door and the cow can be on the opposite corner of the field, and she'll pick her head up and like lock eyes with her. Like that cow knows where Laura is anytime and at all times on the ranch. Like anytime Laura moves, the cow is aware of it. It is just kind of a funny deal. Like the cow doesn't care about, she's really, really calmed down. I feel perfectly safe out there. For the most part, my kids are fine out there with her. But if Laura's anywhere in like a 3-mile radius, that cow knows it. She holds grudges.
Was the calf okay? Did it end up being okay?
The calf was okay. And in fact, it's a really, really promising bull prospect. Being a small ranch, we try not to keep any bulls. But this guy came out and he looked fantastic from day one. So he's actually at Guy in Charlotte's right now, getting fattened up, and he's going to be at the Bluegrass Bull Futurity in April.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what do the next 5 years of your program look like?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. Well, I'm hoping more than anything that we have that commercial beef stuff like really locked down. Like that's a big, big thing. I mean, when you think about, if you've small production like us and we've got 20 to 25 brood cows, if half of them have bull calves, we can't afford to just throw those bull calves into the sale barn for $200-300 every year. Like we've got to get more out of that to make the program financially, stable. So I'm really, really hoping that over the next 5 years, we've got something solid by way of like commercial beef operation. So I was at the Eddie Wood sale last weekend, I guess it was. And there was a lot of talk about TOBAA's certified beef. And I like, Phil Norwood sounds like he's really doing a lot. And I hope they keep going with that, because that's big for the industry as a whole, I think. I think we lose a lot of breeders, especially the ones that are kind of in that small range where they need those funds from the beef side. They got to have the funds you can't just count on selling a couple knockout heifers every year to make your ranch financially stable. Like the beef, I think, has to be there. So hopefully over the next 5 years, we've got a much better grip on that.
Have you thought at all about what your next steps will be in terms of who you'll want to breed those Jeremiah calves to, and kind of the genetics that you hope to add to your herd over the next few years?
Yeah, so we partnered with Murdoch Farms with Andy Brooks on a Big Stuff, Mr. Big Stuff's son, and we really think that those will be. I mean, they're both bringing in some of the same genetics on the maternal side, but I think it's far enough back that we'll be okay. But he's a really, really promising junior herd sire. He's a horn showcase winner, bronze winner, tons and tons of horn. Jeremiah's going to put all the color in the world on him for sure. Both of the bulls have fantastic dispositions, so we're kind of excited about crossing that. So Dale Metz was the original partner on Jeremiah, the original owner, and his plan all along was to cross the 20 gauge genetics with Jeremiah, and we're probably going to do some of that too. But so 20 gauge and Big Stuff are the two kind of genetics that we're really looking forward to putting with the Jeremiah stuff.
And I know you mentioned Stacy does your AI for you. What percentage of your herd would you say is AI versus natural service?
So that, I mean, for the first 2 years, it was 100%. We didn't have a bull. We were kind of, I guess we were probably a little intimidated about getting a bull, just because, a bad bull can really set you back. So we AI'd a lot. That first year, it was probably about 50% conception rate. The second year, it plummeted, absolutely plummeted. We only got like 20% conception rate. Stacy's got a young family herself. She was driving almost an hour each way to AI for us, so that was tough on her. And then I was lucky enough that Dale Metz kind of invited me or accepted my request to get in on the Jeremiah partnership. So we're really, really excited about that. And we're still, I mean, we've only been in on that for 2 breeding seasons, so we're still kind of working to sync up our herd with his time here. He's here from April to mid-July, so we're still working on syncing up with him. I actually took the AI certification course myself so that I can do the AIs, because it was just getting so hard on Stacy to make that drive. My AI conception rates are much lower than hers, but it's a work in progress. But now that we've got 2 bulls, both partnerships, but one of them's here for much longer, our AI is probably going to drop significantly. I mean, we were AIing like 15 cows our first year, and now 5 years later, we'll probably be, even though our herd is doubled, we'll probably be AIing like, I don't know, 5, maybe 10. I doubt we get close to 10 cows this year for AIing.
Would you do anything differently, or do you feel like you learned anything from not having a bull for those first few years that you could give insight to other breeders who are kind of considering which route to go, buying a bull versus, doing a partnership or doing AI work?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the first couple of years, my biggest fear was, you go to the sales and it doesn't take a genius to see, even someone like me in that first sale where I had no idea what was going on, that the same bulls' names are being repeated over and over and over again. And those are the ones whose offspring are selling. Like, even if you didn't see the offspring, you know that these bulls are bringing better money than bulls that, nobody's ever heard of before. So I was a little intimidated about the fact of getting a bull that nobody's ever heard of before, and I'm not going to be able to sell my cows. Well, now I know that that's not necessarily the case. Like, you can get, we have a Mr. Big Stuff's son that nobody's probably ever heard of before, but he's got all the genetic package that one needs. His dam is the same dam as Hanging Tough, so he's a 3/4 sister to Hanging Tough, and you'll get the same. When you put an animal in the ring and you say, "Hey, her sire is a 3/4 sibling to Hanging Tough," you've got the same genetics there, so you can still do well with that. So I would say, like, early on, I just wish I hadn't been as intimidated about jumping in on a bull. Not that, it was great being able to AI and getting lots of genetic diversity, but if we had done both, if I'd have AI'd and then covered with a bull, we wouldn't have been as far behind as we were in those first 2 years.
Are there any other lessons you've learned or advice that you would give new breeders, or those maybe just still within their first year or two?
Yeah, good fences. Make sure you have really, really good fences before you get started. Have the fence up before you bring the cow home. I might have made that mistake a time or two. And I mean, it's funny because when you talk to so many new breeders, it feels like we all do the same thing. We get really excited about Longhorns early, and then we buy everything that we think is a deal and absolutely fill up our ranch. And not that there's not a place for those lower to middle value cows. I would say just when you're starting off, don't feel like you need to fill up your pastures right out of the gates. Like, take your time and build your inventory and build your herd slow and steady, because you'll find out as you go on that what you want is going to change in those first 3 to 4 years really, really quickly and a lot and often. So you want to have some wiggle room there. But if you fill up your pasture, like we went out and every sale we went to those first 2 years, we were buying 3 and 4 animals. And so by the next year, you realize, well, I'd rather not have that one to make room for another one. Well, I can't put that animal right back in the same sale I just bought it from, because everybody's going to think there's something wrong with it and you're not going to get any money out of it. So yeah, I would say ease in. Don't feel like you got to jump in, cannonball into the deep end right out the gates.
A little bit of a learning curve, right?
Right. Yeah.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions. It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more. And now, back to the podcast.
All right, so I'm going to hit you with a few questions here. Who is your all-time favorite Longhorn cow?
All-time favorite Longhorn cow? Well, I'm partial to the ones I have on my place, even though they don't make any others list.
I'm gonna rule those out. You can't pick one of your own.
Can't pick my own. Okay, I mean, Horseshoe J Journey to me is like the most beautiful Longhorn cow. That's everything that you could possibly want. She has. So I was really, really upset about not getting to see her. I know they brought her, I think, to the Horn Showcase this year. And I was seeing all the videos and pictures on Facebook, and I had, FOMO for sure over that, not being there, being able to see her in person. But yeah, she's up there. I mean, Silent Iron is at the top of so many people's list, and to know that she's going into the legacy sale this year is really, really exciting. And I will be there, so I'll get to see her in person. But yeah, those two are at the top of the list. And I might throw in DW Fast Stuff, even though she's young, just because a small East Coast breeder produced her. So for a small East Coast guy, Lloyd Esch up in Pennsylvania, to produce one of the top animals in the industry, she makes it on my list just for that. Yeah.
Nice. I like it. I don't think we've heard that one before, which I always love the first time ones. What about your all-time favorite Longhorn bull? Again, not in your own pasture.
Ooh, favorite bull. Yeah, I don't know. So many bulls do so many different things well. Hanging Tough was at that first Cherry Blossom that I ever went to. He was pretty young back then, but he was already breaking all the records. And he, again, came from a small Pennsylvania breeder, Brian and Mary Stahl, Mill Creek. And I got to see him and pet him up. And that was my first, that might have actually been the first Longhorn bull that I ever saw, ever. And so, again, it was like seeing the blue whale all over again. Like, he was, of course, then he was like a 78-inch, 2.5-year, whatever. I'm getting the numbers wrong, but he wasn't 100 inches yet. And still seeing him in person was just absolutely amazing. I'm a big fan of Big Stuff, another MC bull. The Brightmans are partners on him now, so I've gotten to see him. But we used him in AI early on at the advice of Mary Stahl, and it turned out really, really well. But yeah, I mean, there's so many, except like Midas Touch. Didn't he just go? One of the young bulls just went over 100 inches, so that's exciting. I think it was Midas Touch. Cactus Jack is another really exciting young. I mean, there's so many good. Just in the years we've been in, it feels like there've been so many like exciting young bulls. So it's going to be really exciting to watch how all that goes in the next 3 to 5 years.
So I feel like you've already mentioned like a lot of people and a lot of animals, but I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. Sure. What if you had to pick one of your peers that you just, their whole breeding program, you wish you could just mimic everything about it? They're kind of your idols. Who would you pick?
Oh, geez, that is a hard. I mean, as far as mimicking their program, I haven't got the chance to see a lot of people's ranches, so I haven't seen a lot of the. I've always been impressed with the stalls, Brian and Mary. They have such a small program, but for them to produce that many industry recognized bulls and cows out of such a small program is really, really amazing. We're not far up the road from the Tallies of Tally Longhorns, and they have just an absolutely beautiful herd. The Brightmans at Norwich, New York, we've got a great relationship with them, and it's been really, really fun kind of growing and talking with them over the last year or two. They're still working on their breeding program, so that's exciting. But through them, I've gotten to know Mike Albanese, and going to his place. I mean, first of all, he has that upstate New York is just beautiful, beautiful country. His setting is just so gorgeous, and his herd, it feels like every cow in his herd is there for a very specific reason, which is really, really impressive to me. I have so many that I could say, I bought that one because I thought I would get outbid and I didn't, and so now she's here. Mike can tell you a very specific thing about just about every one of his animals, about why it's there and what he likes about it. So yeah, those are some folks that, those programs are really, really great East Coast programs.
And while Tallies and, I just forgot the other ranch you mentioned, Tallies and Stalls have been in it for a good amount of time, right? Probably over 10, 15 years. Albanese's have been in it for probably 30 or more.
Yeah, Mike says he goes all the way back to the 80s. I mean, he's got stories with, all the old timers and going down to Texas and back when a 40-inch bull was a big deal. Yep. So, I mean, that is knowledge that there are very few of those folks around. And so to have one of those guys that I can call at any time, that I can go to his ranch at any time. I mean, he's a 5-hour drive, but that's not too bad. I mean, that is huge for a small breeder, for a new breeder, to have that kind of expertise in your in my back pocket. But at my phone at any time, that's a big deal. We really appreciate Mike for that, for sure.
For sure. All right, let's talk about internet marketing and websites and social media for the last few minutes here. Sure. What would you say the average amount of time you spend a week looking at Longhorn websites is?
I'm afraid to say, because my wife and kids are in the room. If they know I'm on social media, that I spend a lot of time. I enjoy doing the Instagram stuff and the Facebook stuff with making the little videos myself. I love looking through and seeing what everyone else is doing. I mean, that's a huge asset. I don't use social media for anything else. It's so everything else is ridiculous. So I stay away from all that stuff. But man, how much time do I spend? Probably an hour a day at least. And even that's probably being a little too generous, because on the weekends, who knows how much time I spend on it. But I mean, it's just a great way. I was surprised. I posted a picture recently on Facebook in one of the Longhorns group of that Starry Night heifer, and talking about how we were considering consigning her and didn't know which cell to put her in. And I was overwhelmed at the response I got from some of the big time breeders down in Texas. And I mean, that's something that you just can't do without the internet, without marketing. And hired hand plays such a huge part in that. The first thing they all ask is, hey, do you have her on your website? And it makes it so seamless to be able to copy and paste your hired hand website in. It all integrates. They can go as far back in the pedigree as they want and look, not just what's there on the page. I do know a very, very small number of other breeders that don't have that hired hand website. And it makes it so difficult, because the progeny's not there. The measurement history's not there. You can only go 3-4 generations back on the pedigree. It's so hard to do that, thorough, especially when you're really, really trying to match up pedigrees and breedings. And being able to go as far back as you want is such a big deal.
So would the last 3 cows that you've looked at on the internet be different than any that we've talked about so far?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
So if you look at the last 3 Longhorns in your search history, are they different from any of the cows we've already talked about in the podcast? Are there any new ones in there?
There are. So I've got a cow named Justice Kate, who's Gambling Kate over Justify, the bull. And Gambling Kate is also going into the legacy sale. So I was just, not that I haven't probably 20 times, but I was looking at Gambling Kate's pedigree again, and that's going to be a really, really fun one to watch and see. And then, oddly enough, another mother-daughter story, that the legacy cow we bought in partnership with the Brightmans with RTG last year, Mayola, River Forks Mayola, her mom was in the Eddie Wood sale. So I was doing a lot of research on that mom, and we were lucky enough to buy her mom. So we'll be reuniting Mayola with her mother here in the next. She's actually at the Cheneys in North Carolina right now in transit, so she's on her way up. So I think those are the last two in my search history. Yeah.
So what if I ask the same question, but about ranches, not Longhorns? Are there any ranches you've just learned about that you kind of have been going through their site, looking at all their animals?
Not particularly. No, mostly the sales. I end up, like, anytime there's a sale, I'm on Hired Hand and then just digging. Click this ranch link for more information, and I'm on there, and then that'll kind of take you down rabbit holes. Like, I mean, so many, like, it's funny how many times I end up back at New Age Cattle Company's ranch, and Randy Murray, like, he's got such an awesome operation, is doing so many good things down there. So I don't know. I can't tell if all roads lead to Hired Hand or if all roads lead to New Age Cattle Company. It might be one or the other for me right now.
Are there any, so you brought up sales. Are there any sales you all are going to try to go to this year that you haven't been to before?
Yeah, actually, yes. So I did the Eddie Wood for the first time. It worked out pretty well, where a family friend of mine's father was having a memorial service in Texas that same weekend. So I was in there for the TOBAA stuff and for the sale, and that was a really fun experience. We always do the Cherry Blossom and the East Coast, the G&G Fall Classic in Culpeper, but we're going to do the Bluegrass this year. So that's a new one we haven't been to before. We've got at least one bull going into the Futurity, maybe two. That same cow talked about before, Justice Kate, she had a really nice bull calf out of a Gold Mine One son that we may put in. And then we've got our Starry Night heifer that we're going to consign there that we're excited about. So we'll be in Kentucky for the first time. We've heard great things about that facility, that it's just one of the best facilities that anybody uses. So excited about that. It's kind of a cool deal because I feel like it's kind of equidistant for the Texas, Oklahoma folks and for the East Coast folks. About an 8-hour drive for us. So
yeah, that's not bad at all, probably compared to a few of the sales, right?
Right. Yeah. Fort Worth is 24 hours. So
that's a little bit of a haul.
Yeah. And we will be back at the Legacy again this year with a trailer. So we will be making that drive with the trailer. We're consigning some Mayola embryo that are safe in calf and recips, and it's going to be a choice lot. So the buyer will have their pick of a 30-day-old calf out of the 3 that are going to be born. So 3 recips, safe in calf with Mayola over Warlock HR. Really, that's another really exciting young bull. I probably should have plugged him earlier. But he's in the mid-90s with a broken tip. And if you go look at his Hired Hand and look at all the progeny listed, and man, you talk about a bull that's producing color. Like, he's really producing color. All his progeny are pretty young right now, so it's hard to see with the horn, but the pedigree's there. You feel pretty good about the horn you're going to get out of him. And putting him over Mayola, who Mayola's on her way to 90 inches herself. Like, we think that's pretty exciting. And whoever wins that will get their choice out of the 3 calves after all of the youngest one's 30 days old. So it's kind of a cool deal.
That is. I like that.
Yeah.
Are you going to share a table with RTG again? Did you already coordinate, or?
Oh, they owe me. Yeah, they owe me. See, and they're so lucky. I'm not a drinker, because if I was a drinker, I'd run up their bar tab best I can. But yeah, we're going to be there again. And since, that's a partnership lot with them, so I've got the trailer going down. I hope they fill my trailer up on the way back up too. It should be a good time.
Well, I feel like I learned a lot about your breeding program, the history of your farm today. Hopefully our listeners did as well. Is there anything else before we sign off that you want to share about your program or anything?
I don't know. I feel like I did a lot of talking. I appreciate it. Yeah. And I mean, if for any of our fellow breeders, if you're ever in the East Coast, you need a place to stay, we've got the guest house there. Just give us a call. We'll be happy to show you around, some of the other. There's a lot of cool stuff going on the East Coast. You guys don't forget about us.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly.